Welcome back to Lucid Living, and if this is your first time, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy to have you aboard. My name is Andrew Larkin. I'm an actor, model, performer, storyteller, breathwork coach, and today I'm going to be your host, your guide for today's podcast episode. All right, my friends, I'm super stoked to have this conversation that we're about to dive into, but before we introduce this amazing guest, let's do some just deep, intentional breath work to start us off, whether this is your morning, your afternoon, or your night. Just bringing mindfulness and intention to our breath can calm the nervous system down and bring presence and stillness throughout the rest of our day, whether that's again morning or you're going into your dream state at night. So we're gonna do a 4-2-6 breath. This is a parasympathetic breath. So when we exhale longer than our inhale, it calms the nervous system down, channels that parasympathetic, which is that rest and recover. So the technique is going to be an inhale for 4, a hold for 2, and an exhale for 6. And as we inhale, we're going to be inhaling through the nose. And on the inhale, the diaphragm, the belly is going to be expanding outwards like you're filling up a water balloon. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we hold it at the top for 2, and then we're going to exhale out the mouth. That belly is going to come back to your center, and we're going to do that for 6. And we're just going to do it 3 times. All right. So let's ground ourselves in this moment, and let's begin with an inhale through the nose in 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2. Exhale out the mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2. Exhale out the mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last one through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2. And exhale out the mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can return your natural breathing. Welcome back. Thank you. Thank you. All right, ladies and gents, human beings. Today on the pod, we have a personal brand and celebrity stylist, an advocate for self-confidence, a wardrobe curator, a karaoke lover, a runway producer, a speaker, my friend Ivanna Fontana. Ivanna, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. And what an introduction. That before the whole breathwork session, you have nailed that. That is incredible.
Thank you. I've been practicing.
What an incredible introduction. Thank you. I feel so like centered and grounded now.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Now, Ivana, just starting off right now, tell us where you're at physically, how you're feeling emotionally, spiritually, just where are you at in this season of life?
I love this question. I have been in a season of so much growth,
Mm,
spiritually, emotionally, physically. I'm very, I think, onto my health and my strength, my daily gym workouts, so profoundly into it and onto it because nothing is more important right now than my physical and mental
mm,
health. Um, I feel like I've done so much work on myself and I'm still trying to integrate it all that I've really had to be patient with myself in allowing this new version to take up space.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, it's a lot because in terms of emotional and spiritual growth, in terms of my faith, um, it's a very different version of who I was when I was living in Australia to where I
Mm,
am now living in America, and it's been about just over 2 years.
mm,
So, yeah, I'm getting to know her every day, and the
mhm,
patience. I'm practicing patience because I'm not very patient.
mhm,
If I'm going to be transparent, but there's just been a lot of growth in terms of like perspective and beliefs and how I navigate day to day living in this country, being away from my family, um, all these different behavior patterns that I've let go of because I've been doing the inner work. And then what that looks like inside of friendships and then romantic relationships. And yeah, there's
mhm,
a lot. So I would say there's more peace where I'm at right now, for sure.
mhm,
But then there's also a practice of a lot of patience needed because it's like getting to know this new person.
mhm. Yeah, God, that's so beautiful. And you're so self-aware, which is why I'm so excited to have this conversation because
Thank you.
it's gonna be so great. All right, now, I always find when having even just conversations with people I just met or just diving deeper into really understanding who someone is, and also I feel like my understanding of other people has started with starting to understand myself first, and it started with going through all my stories about who I was, who I am, and a lot of it came from stories from my childhood, from my parents, understanding, epigenetics, so like my lifestyle, like how I was raised, the beliefs I was grown up in, all curated and led to kind of who I am today. So I'm just curious, in your own words, what has the story, the life of Ivana from coming in and entering this world in a different part of the country, and what was the family dynamic like, growing up, going through the schooling system, if you went through the schooling system, finding different hobbies and interests, rising, falling, going through the whole gamut of life, and then all those steps that led you to where you are today. So in your own words, if you just want to share a little bit about kind of your life story, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am born and raised in Perth, Western Australia, into an Italian family. So I come from a very cultural, family orientated background. My grandparents migrated from Italy back in the 60s, and everything was family growing up from what I can remember. Family gatherings, a lot of eating, cousins, family holidays, passion, loud. People are talking, but it sounds like we're yelling at each other.
Mhm.
Um, so there was that heavily influenced. Even though I grew up in Australia in a normal school system, um, my mum put me into, I think, again, with the whole confidence thing. If I work backwards and figure out where it all came from, I started like modeling at the age of 5 years old.
Mhm.
Um, the dancing, so gymnastics, so doing all these like different hobbies. I think there was this self-expression always wanting to come through. Self-expression being probably my number one value now, and like probably why I do what I do.
Mhm.
But there was definitely I had the opportunity to express myself through certain things, like the hobbies that I did through school, through friendship. um I think I was quite full on as a child. I think I was a lot for my mum to deal with at the time. I think there was a lot of energy and a lot of like eagerness, outspokenness, boldness, wanting to express myself. Sometimes I think it was too much for her to handle. But then one of my grandmothers was one of, like, I think one of the people that nurtured me a lot in a way where I always felt super accepted by her. I always felt
Mhm.
like I could be safe in her presence just to be me. Whereas sometimes certain moments, I think I felt a little bit, sorry, I just had messages come through.
You're fine.
I felt a little bit maybe suppressed in certain situations. So um I do see when I look back where certain situations I was like kind of like suppressed and felt like I couldn't be myself. So then that was like where the struggle of confidence, I think, started coming through.
Mhm.
So, as kids, you're childlike, you don't care what people think, you're just yourself. And then, certain situations happen or a family member will say something to you. And that was kind of where this forming of not feeling confident and feeling insecure in myself started to stem from.
Mhm.
And then I would say probably like going into like my teenage years, high school, feeling more self-conscious, wanting to be like accepted and into like the friendship groups and stuff. I think I struggled a lot through high school. Um, I had certain groups of friends, but I always felt like I wanted to just kind of like break away and do my own thing.
Mhm.
I always had this desire to kind of like not wanting to be held down or told what to do. I had an issue with authority,
Mhm.
definitely.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I feel like I decided from about 15 years old onwards that I wanted to be in the fashion industry. I think coming from, doing modeling, being around other girls, my mum making my costumes and outfits for, certain
Mhm.
shows and stuff that I was part of. She was always like really put together. As far as I can remember, my mum was so elegantly put together. And so that influence has definitely made a mark and
Mhm.
definitely influenced my going into the fashion industry. um yeah, I think there was like that perfectionism world that drew me in, where I felt like, it was almost this unattainable world where, every little girl kind of has a fantasy or dream to be like, whether it's that princess life or like, the beautiful the fashion world or like the as a model modeling industry, whether it's healthy mentally or not, I think there's some kind of like, draw for a young girl to be part of something like that.
Mm,
I don't believe now it was a healthy thing, but looking back, it's like that was my journey, because what came from all of that, which, I'll backtrack on,
mhm,
was the ultimately of like loving myself. But I had to go through that struggle of like not feeling confident or not feeling beautiful enough, and being a part of a world that was so unattainable because it was just based on perfection, which is not real, where I had to go through being part of that world to then really figure out who I was to truly love myself at my core.
mhm.
So that's a big convoluted kind of like reason where I ended up in terms of being in the fashion industry. But as for my story and where it all came from and where like who I grew up with in terms of family and culture, heavily influenced into, why I do what I do today, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once you said you were 15, but you had been in the space of, modeling and fashion and that whole world for a long time.
Mm.
When did you know it was like possible, or I guess was it from a young age that you knew it was possible? Did you want to just model or just be in a space, or did you want to, you saw like you had mentors or you had public figures of people who were designing clothes, you're like, that's what I want. Did you have like, was there a moment like that?
There was, and I mean, I think that like because I ended up teaching like modeling and grooming and deportment and
Mm,
all that kind of stuff. And I think I got told by a modeling agent that I didn't have the look, or I didn't have what it took to
mm,
be a model. And that was probably another person that I shouldn't have listened to, because in that moment I decided, well, I don't have what it takes to be a model. Even though now I've come to America and even though I'm later in age, it's like I've had opportunities to do that. Whereas I got told at 14 by one modeling agent that I didn't have what it took. So then I made that decision that I wasn't going to be able to do it. You know what
mm.
I mean? It's
Absolutely.
so crazy how we can listen to someone's perspective and like run with it and decide that in that moment we won't do something because of what someone said.
Yeah. That's why,
It's
yeah, I think
that's
community is so important when that does happen because all it
yeah.
takes is one
100%.
voice and it's not even always true. Like what is true, what is right, what is wrong. And all it takes is one person to make us say like we look funnier, we act funnier, we do this and this isn't right or that's not right. And then we agree and then we're alone in a room and we feel like constricted, but there's nobody judging us, but we create like a prison in
Yeah,
ourselves.
because that moment, all the way back, however many years, made you decide that that's what was facts in that moment, when it wasn't. It was purely someone's opinion.
Yeah.
It's a lot to, kind of like, pull apart and dissect if you want to really kind of work out where all your beliefs stem from, and built upon based on situations from the
Hmm.
past, which you understand because you've done the work.
Hmm.
But someone that doesn't have that awareness, that can really, ruin someone's confidence and
Yeah,
self-belief, right?
absolutely.
Um, yeah, as for the fashion, I think I started watching fashion TV at 15 years old, and I would watch runway show after runway show and be inspired by like the designers and like the models, and how the whole process of it was put together. Like that inspired me, and that kind of pushed me to want to study fashion. I started doing certain courses while I was still studying in high school, and then I was like, yeah, I'm going to go and study a full degree. So I got a full degree in fashion design. I graduated after 3 years, and I was like, I don't want to be a designer right now, but I
Mm,
had this real passion for styling and the other side of it, working with um, the designers and to execute their collections on the runway and do photo shoots and dress people on the red carpet. All that aspect of it was what I was
mhm,
really passionate about. Yeah, so I left my hometown and then I went to go and work in Sydney. Um, I think I worked for free for a very long time to build up all my experience with like the
mhm,
best of the best in the industry. And I basically just built up a portfolio, worked with whoever I could, flew myself to different fashion weeks around the world to try and get all the experience that I could get. And it was, before I had all this self-awareness, it was like
mhm,
this chase to be part of something,
mhm,
to be able to execute a vision, to be creative, to express some form of creativity. But I think it was also a way that I could hide behind a mask
mm.
as well. If I'm going to get really deep into
Yeah.
it, it was like, hmm, Well, I'm around all these creative, amazing people, and I love being creative, and I can almost feel some kind of belonging or a safety where I'm around people who are kind of like the misfits in a sense, where it's like I kind of don't feel like I'm in that box of of what I should be doing and probably what my parents would want me to do, for
Mhm.
the safety of a career and how it should look. But I'm in these situations where not everyone can do because it's not the easiest thing to kind of be part of, but somehow I was able to be part of different projects and different opportunities, and I would find myself reaching out to certain stylists or other creatives, and I would end up working with them somehow, and I just would build on my experience, and I was like, I wasn't scared to hear no, and if someone said no, it would be the next person. So I kind of
Mhm.
had this relentless spirit in me to really want to pursue this career in fashion, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I think I got to my mid 20s, and as much as I was like loving what I was doing, there was this feeling of emptiness inside of me because there was a part of myself that I was like really not accepting and rejecting.
Mhm.
And I was trying so hard to attain this perfectionism,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
as we all know, perfectionism just doesn't exist. And perfectionism is like having that perfectionism. I was always able to kind of attain it through attaching myself to what I do.
Mhm.
So you can
Yeah.
see like the correlation.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I started doing the work and I continued with fashion. I loved styling clients. I loved the transformation aspect of it, and I still do, whether it's an everyday person or whether it's a celebrity. But I think I started really going on that search of figuring out who I was and realizing that I didn't have that strong foundation in myself to
Mhm.
feel myself without having anything external validating me.
Yeah.
So a big realization was that I was seeking a lot externally to feel like I was enough, because
Mhm.
ultimately I didn't feel enough at my core.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a lot to swallow as well. That's a lot to process to like, yeah, really continue in a world where like you're probably never really going to get accepted fully and you're always going to be judged for what you do or how you
Mhm.
look. So it was a conflicting moment where I was like, do I stay in this or do I leave and pursue something else?
Mhm.
But I've stuck in the industry and I've stuck doing what I'm doing because I have a bigger why now. My purpose is a lot clearer. Um, and there's definitely a long way to go in terms of sharing my vulnerability and authenticity with people.
Mhm.
Um, as I've evolved, especially as I've even moved to America, there's more space to do that in a place like America, that's for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, in terms of my work, like I get to work with some incredible people. Um, I love what I do and I love what I'm able to give to people. I still am on a long journey of working on myself and what like brings me peace, because I know now that it's definitely not my work and anything external. So I think it's been about 10 years now of working on myself like nonstop and just trying to like be patient and integrate it and
Mhm.
realize that there's no end post where you're going to arrive at feeling a certain way. You have to just accept the journey and the ebbs and flows and realize that there's going to be this up and down feeling, and that's something external isn't just going to be the reason for your ultimate joy and happiness.
Yeah. So beautiful. And
Yeah.
I want to talk about
Sorry with
masks.
this, by
Yeah.
the way.
No, you're fine. I want to talk about masks for a second because you had brought that up and growing when you started off and you were doing volunteer work just to build experience, which is so amazing. I feel like a lot of people like that's hard to invest in yourself and because it's like I need to make money, I need to survive, so we'll jump into pay gigs, but like you're like paying your dues and you're learning and growing and soaking it all in. Were you able to find that you had an authentic, you knew who like you were at that time, you knew what your style was, and you were able to always speak your truth, like with authenticity, even at those young stages? Or was it you were like fitting, you were like kind of nodding along, like yes, kind of melding to whoever creatively you were with. And then as you kind of stepped away and started doing your thing, you started finding your look, your voice, your authentic vision. Because now you're doing it. You're doing it. Was it always like that, or did you find was it challenging? You were like fitting in versus finding your own authentic voice.
That's a really good question. The less you know who you are, the more you follow the crowd, right?
Mm,
So, in my early stages as like, assisting people, assisting other stylists, trying to navigate what my style aesthetic was, I did feel like I was influenced by certain people I was working with, or certain trends, or certain designers, or like, what's the hottest thing going? Because I mean, social media wasn't a big thing when I first started. So, you would look to the fashion magazines, you would look to the really well-known stylists at the time, and that was all you really had to go by in terms of like a guiding light, right?
mm,
Now there's just so much noise, and it's just completely saturated on social media of what's supposed to be in fashion, what's not. Like it's just everything and anything. So more than ever, it's like knowing who you are so that your own vision and style aesthetic can be communicated, right?
mm,
Um, through the work that you do. Um, it's it's really important to have tunnel vision, and it's really
mm,
important to try not to get distracted from all the noise. But there's so much of it, and I still struggle with it. Sometimes I have to kind of like get off social media because I'm like, I don't want to be influenced.
mm,
Um, but nature for me is like a big thing that brings me back to my core. Like if I'm not around nature, and like especially in a place like LA, the energy is just like so, I'm super sensitive. So the energy
mm,
is like, you've been.
yeah.
At the moment I'm living in by the ocean, thank God. I race to get back to the ocean. Like if
Yeah.
I have to go into LA and like do a fitting with a client and drive around to showrooms and get clothes,
Mm,
I'm racing home to get to the ocean, because like my nervous system is so hyped up from the energy of even just
mm,
driving, the traffic, being in LA, being around certain people. It's really important for me to be in nature. Otherwise, I feel like I'm going crazy,
mm. I'm the same way.
especially in this
Yeah.
city.
That's amazing. That's why LA is like so cool because you can be at the beach in 30 minutes. You can go into the mountains for a little bit, and then you got the city like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Now, that's a big jump from Australia to not just Pennsylvania, but like Hollywood, like the thing that people dream about. What was that? Was that planned? Like, did you have weeks, like months, or even years of you're like, all right, I'm taking that next step creatively, for my career. And LA is the spot. Did you always know LA was the spot? Was there a lot of fear, imposter syndrome, like coming into LA, coming into again, not just for a career setting, but it's a culture shock too. It's so different. I don't know if you'd visited LA before that, but what was that transition like from Australia to not just again visiting LA, but moving here and then if your life being completely, uplifted? What was that like?
You want me to be honest?
Yeah.
It's been probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, I had intentions to come here. I had intentions to come here sooner than what I did. My first trip out here was 2015. Um, 4 months after that trip, I was hosting my first event with the Australian Consul General at their residence with another girl from Australia who was living here. And we wanted to host our own event and introduce Australian fashion to the US market. So that was something that I never anticipated that I would do. I didn't even think I'd like Hollywood, to be honest. I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was a 2 week trip, and I ended up extending for like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Came back, hosted the event, and I started just cultivating relationships, networking. Networking is key in this city to
Mm-hmm.
survive. I started just building up my network, and then I finally decided, okay, I'm going to go through the process because I wasn't really legally supposed to be working here.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through the process and I got my visa, which took a long time. And then by the time I got it accepted, and by the time I decided to move, COVID hit. So then that delayed it even more.
Yeah.
And then by the time that I actually moved over, I had already kind of like um, used up a year and a half of my 3 year visa. So by the time I decided to move here, everything had changed. Everyone that I knew were no longer doing what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
People had moved on. I literally had to start from ground zero, coming here in my mid-30s as a woman to a new country, new
Mhm.
everything, was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I do not recommend it.
Mhm.
But I had to get a therapist because my anxiety and my uncertainty and not having any predictability on anything. I didn't know where I was going to earn money. I mean, I had my visa, but I didn't know where I was going to be earning my next dollar from because I didn't come here with a job. Um,
Mhm.
I had to I had to get work. I had to start hustling. I had to start going to events. I had to start networking. And then I was living with a friend and then didn't know where I was going to be living because that was only a short-term situation. Bank accounts, social security, couldn't get one without the other. And I was
Mhm.
like literally starting a whole life at an age where you would probably start settling down and establishing yourself,
Mhm.
not kind of like starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Um, did it on my own because like I was in a relationship but that didn't last when I got here, unfortunately. So I was having major regrets about moving. I even told my partner at the
Mhm.
time that I would move back, and he was like, I don't want you to move back for me. And I was like, oh my God.
Mhm.
So it was scary. It was I really had to I started going to church again. I
Mhm.
started going to church. My faith muscle hadn't had to be exercised, nor was it really at the forefront of my day-to-day life in Australia. I mean, I
Mhm.
grew up Catholic, um, did all the obligatory, things that you had to do, religion at school, but none of it connected with me. I was completely
Yeah.
disconnected from it. But it was almost like I moved to the US and I found my faith and um, I had to find something that was really going to like hold me steady because I was not feeling mentally stable. Nothing around me was stable at all.
Mhm.
Like until I had to really just put one foot in front of the other and establish myself. My family obviously was so far away and could only help so much over the phone. Um, so yeah, it has been the biggest blessing and probably the hardest thing that I've ever done. But no one can take away the resilience that I've built inside of me. So
That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
That's the number one word I was thinking of as you were sharing that story. Always just the idea of Tony Robbins talks about this. Life is very predictable if you look at history, where there's these seasons of drought, the recessions, the depressions, and after that, within year period, um, it always rises up, and it's like strong or hard times make strong people, and then when things get really good, really good, really good, good times make weak people, and then it drops back down, and it's like this constant like heart rate monitor of ebb and flow, and you are so strong and like you did it and you're not just surviving but you are I hate to use the word thriving because like life has so many intricacies throughout it, but I wish I prepared better and had some of the articles of all the amazing work you've done because you've worked with, celebrities and being a huge part. I mean, the what was it, the Met Gala? Is that the right yeah, just happened and you're out there working with some of like people in the limelight, athletes as well, going to these incredible events, connecting with these amazing creative minds who are so outside the box, thinking differently, seeing the world differently. I can't imagine just all that work that you put in and even sharing your story and the struggle through it. Like it's paying off, and then you're still so young. I mean, like age, like I'm 26, and I'm like I still struggle with the age thing, like I need to start figuring out my stuff and start
Oh my
even
God,
like
you've got ages. I wish
that's
I was 26
that's what
again.
I'm saying. Like I have friends who are like settling down at 23, and I'm like, gosh, the comparison game is so nuts, and imposter syndrome is
Yeah.
so there.
Don't do that. Don't
But
compare yourself. It is
yeah.
honestly like it's just it's the, as they say, the thief of all joy. But like honestly, you just need to do what lights up your soul. Like if someone had said that to me like 10 plus years ago, like truly do what lights you up. Because I still struggle. Obviously, coming from an Italian family, I am not following the status quo of what an Italian girl would be doing at this age. Trust
Yeah.
me. All my family, all my cousins back home, they're all married with their third, fourth baby. And I'm out here at my age, like doing this
Mm.
crazy ass lifestyle in Hollywood. And like, honestly, do what lights up your soul. I can't express that enough because as we see in the world, there is so much tragedy, there is so much crazy negativity, like so many horrible things that are taking place that, yeah, you've only got one shot. So, like, figure out what that is and what you want to do, and like just let God work through you and do your thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, for anyone listening who doesn't know how me and Ivana met, we met through an amazing emotional intelligence coach by the name of Emil Steenveld, and that was 2001, I think that was when we did that one. I've done three of them with him, so I'm like all over the place, but I think it was '01 or so, or 2000 or 2001.
Yeah,
And
I remember what year it was, to be honest.
And it was so cool just meeting you and seeing. I think we were accountability buddies at one point with it. And again, you're just so cool. You were doing the work, and it's always amazing being on those calls because Emil is so incredible at creating a space and cultivating and and kicking people's ass and like letting them overcome themselves. Because you can read all the books, you can do all the courses, but it's really like you stepping into your fear, your discomfort, going through all of your stories about what's holding you back and your limiting beliefs. And he has so many great techniques for all that. And we're on these live calls, and he's just slowly picking people apart isn't the right like connotation that I want to evoke there, but he's just calling people out with so much love, and we see breakthroughs happening, breakdowns to breakthroughs, and it's the coolest experience ever. And that's how me and Ivana met. And I just want to were you always in that? Did you always have that language? Did you have people who had emotional intelligence, like a high emotional intelligence when you were younger, and it was just kind of an extension of all the work you've been doing? Or was there an event that had you question like faith and then be like, what is life? And then questioning all your stories that led you to a meal. So what was your relationship with emotional intelligence when you were younger to the course and then where you are now?
It definitely was lacking growing up for sure. I have incredible family. I just didn't have emotionally I don't like saying emotionally intelligent family. It sounds
That's it,
bad,
yeah,
but they weren't equipped with the tools that I think
mm,
I would have needed and thrived on growing up for
yeah,
sure. So definitely lacked emotional intelligence. And I was your age. I was 26 when I first started my journey of, going down that self-development, personal development, emotional intelligence path, really. And I haven't stopped since. It's been um in Australia, here in America. But the best part, honestly, is all the community and friends that I have like cultivated just from those, courses and events and masterminds in
mm,
itself. Like a whole community of people that are like my family, going through all of those things. Because I mean, as you said, you go through all these breakdowns, and you're super vulnerable when like these strangers are knowing everything about you in a
mhm,
matter of days or weeks.
yeah.
So it gets super vulnerable very quickly, but there's a safety, there's a community, there's a bond that you form, and like I wouldn't change it for the world. It's like being one of the best things that I've ever personal development is like the best investment that I've ever done in myself.
Mhm. Yeah, and because it's like you were talking about the external world in especially fashion, similarly to like to acting, where it's like we're finding our brand, we're finding our voice through our clothes. It's an extension of ourselves. And I have kind of a funny story for me because I'm still trying to find my brand. I'm still trying to figure myself out. But I
Yeah.
remember because I cared so much about what people thought about me when I was younger, when I was in middle school, when I was in high school. And then I started my personal work when I was in college and outside of college. And I remember
Right.
reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I remember reading that book. I'm like, I'm just not gonna give a fuck about anything.
Yeah.
So I went so deep into that where I was just like, I didn't care about my hair, I didn't care about my clothes, and I just like it was there's like this liberation, this freedom of not caring what people think. And then I was like getting into the space where I wasn't giving a fuck about not giving a fuck, so I actually started giving a fuck. It was like this weird thing crumbling down on me. And I was because I think everything has a yin and yang, everything has a pro and a con. If you go too far in something that's good, it ends up becoming a negative, and I think that's with a lot of things. And I started to like question like kind of who am I? Like how do I show up? Like when I dress, I was in a fraternity for a couple years. It wasn't really fully my vibe, but I hated the idea of dressing up with like a suit and tie and like being one of those guys. So I kind of labeled that as dressing up as like I hate that guy, you know, and I created that story even though that's not even true. And so I went like full hippie for like a year or two and just again didn't care what I looked like. But there's something, and then if I had a thing where I had like a wedding or something to go to and I had to dress up, I'm like, oh, this feels kind of nice. It feels like really nice. You know, I feel kind of empowered. I'm like, what is this? Like, I have these conflicting ideologies and feelings towards this, and I'm just like trying to find myself. So, how was like the idea, like finding? I guess where I'm going is like the difference between dressing to impress, because I feel like when you're wearing something, like if I wear funky clothes, like it's a great conversation starter for people to come up and be like, oh, that's a really cool necklace, it's really cool, you know, pants or stuff like that. I always love that part of clothes. But there's also it's like social media where it's like I'm posting for me because that feels the most authentic way to not like get destroyed in the external world of social media, but I can't disconnect the extrinsic part, which is like the likes that come with it and people seeing it and receiving it. And I think it's very similar to how we dress. Like I'm dressing for me, this is for me, but I can't take away the part of other people seeing it, receiving it, and liking it or not liking it through just like a facial expression or actually coming up to you. And it was really kind of hard to find. So I think like the mental, like doing it for you is so important, but it's also like linked to doing it for like I don't even know if I have a question here, but how has it been for you in like finding your voice through your clothes and like your style? And other times where like you're expressing yourself and someone shoots you down, or sometimes people lift you up. So I guess the question is like, how do you feel with that and where you are now?
So I think for me, like you said, fashion, clothing, it's an extension of your personality. For me, it's like it's the ultimate form of self-expression.
Yeah.
It's a way to also enhance like, you know, mental performance in a way or how people
Hmm.
perceive you. It's actually a scientifically backed um study and that they've done at Northwestern University. And it's actually a term called enclothed cognition, basically saying that the way that you dress, clothing is all linked to, you know, mental performance and how you see yourself. So
Yeah.
there's definitely studies to show that it has that much of an effect, a profound
Hmm.
impact and effect on your mental health and your
Hmm.
I think that term is quite cool, quite
That's great.
profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like when someone's like, "Oh, you know, how do you style? Like, where how did you learn how to style?" It's a feeling and it's something that I'll do when like I'm in the moment. The moment that I start getting in my head about it, I'll get blocked.
Mm.
So it's like I guess it's like maybe my form of meditation when I'm actually in the moment doing it and I'm just I don't know putting something together. I don't know how I do it.
Mhm.
It's how my brain works. I would say how my undiagnosed ADHD brain works. Um, yeah, it's a form of self-expression. It's a way for me to like if someone comes to me and says they want to, you know, up level, elevate their look. How I see them and how they see themselves is obviously completely different.
Mhm.
And I think because I've been so immersed in that world of like fashion, runway, models, perfection, I've got such a high standard of how I want that person to be seen, but that's just through my eyes. But
Mhm.
then it's a complete different um perspective, right? But that's where the perfectionism is great because I can take someone from like here to here and like their confidence will just skyrocket. And that's where
Mhm.
I'm like, that's why I do what I do. That's the transformation that I aim for and that
Mhm.
I am so passionate about.
Yeah.
Um, that sometimes having that perfectionism standard and expectation in myself and in how I do my work, yeah, sometimes like the expectation is just way too high, and that's where I struggle with perfectionism because I'm like, no, it can be better. No, I can do it like this,
Mhm.
but that's being a creative and being critical on yourself, and then the imposter syndrome, I guess, also comes into play.
Mhm. Ah, imposter syndrome. That's a whole wormhole. But so self-confidence. Um as a like an advocate for self-confidence, I've heard you talk about it many times, on your Instagram lives and just sharing your own personal stories. And I also find some of the it's like there's this idea of turning your mess into your message. And I think that people that I admire the most, Sean Stevenson is one of them, who's now an expert in the field of nutrition, health, and that whole world. He struggled so deeply. He had like a physical degeneration in his back when he was like 20, like something that shouldn't have happened at a young age. And people would like, label that as bad. And it started with he was just eating really unhealthily. And he shares his story a lot, and that mess of what can like derail so many people, he transformed that story and made it his life's mission to find out what works for him, find out the truth, and help and save and serve so many millions of people across the world. It's one of my favorite guys, and there are so many people who have that stories in completely different fields, whether that's health, whether that's medicine, whether that's um, art, actors, people who have struggled the most have turned it around to make it their life mission so that other people, don't feel that way in some way. So I always trust people more who have been through the struggle of what they're teaching than people who have never struggled through it and are teaching this certain thing. But with self-confidence, when it comes to kind of sharing and talking about self-confidence with maybe your clients or just with friends, do you talk about like what self-confidence looks like in everyday life and going through like almost emotional intelligence-y kind of framework and reframing certain ideas and stepping into their truth and power? Or is it more so of finding self-confidence through expression through their clothing and through their fashion and how they show up in that way? Or both?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think I start interjecting certain vocabulary as I'm taking them through the process. When someone does sign up to have a, style overhaul, my first thing that I do say to them is, you're not just coming to me for clothing, you're coming to me for the transformation.
Mm,
And that's obviously like going to be part of this journey and process. It's giving them the education of like, okay, this is their body shape. This is how you dress this body shape. This is certain brands that you can wear to make you achieve this certain look, right? But then it's the confidence, it's the self-love, it's the wellness. It's like, what's your morning routine? How are you showing up in the morning? Like, what is your morning routine? Like, all these different factors play into obviously maintaining this level of how they want to feel about themselves, right? Why do you go to the gym? Why do you go and see a therapist? Like,
mhm,
it's the same thing. And I mean, like, having just all of the fashion and the clothing is like the cherry on the top, but once they actually internally energetically get rid of clothing in their wardrobe that's been sitting there for months, they create
mm,
space for,
yeah.
like me teaching them how to actually piece items together. They don't know that they need to go and like shop with thousands of dollars worth of money and like make themselves feel better that way. They're actually like taking away as opposed to like bringing more in, and they're
Mhm,
feeling better about themselves. If
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. My mom, she's kind of started her own business where she's like she calls it like a simplification or not really, but like she cleans people's places and like energetically does a bunch of spiritual work and holistic health work, and just by showing up, she's like, she did a bunch of like feng shui, so like basically where things are in the house can completely change the energy of the room. And then I think she's taught me just my whole life about simplification. I would have because my dad kind of would hoard a lot of things, so I would always like be precious with my items. I had like a first grade flag football jersey for like 12 years. I'm like, "Yeah, you don't really need this anymore." And I would hold on to all this, and my mom would be like, "All right, Andrew, here's like a trash bag. I'll give you $5 if you just put all your clothes in the bag and we can donate it to charity." And it's like, whoosh, okay, like if you have like a strong incentive as a kid. But it's amazing um how much energy our clothes hold on to, how much like emotion we hold on to our clothes. Same thing with our hair. Like when I like cut my hair, it was like I was a different dude. So many things hold so much energy. So that's an amazing perspective to have that I think is super valid and super important. And I also want to talk about because I don't know if I never looked at this, even though it's silly, as you're a designer essentially. Like you're an artist, and a lot of people who I like to bring on here have a framework of looking at life through the lens of art, and art is in so many different facets of life. And for you, it's so creative. Do you have certain methods to tap into that creativity? Like you said, there are some moments where things get blocked, but is it being out in nature? Is it um, seeing inspiration from other people or certain public figures who you really admire and seeing their stuff and like saying, oh, I could spin that off? Where or is it like you're singing and dancing, like karaoke? Like where do you find inspiration for the ideas of all these amazing pieces that you put together?
Movement for sure. Like one thing that I really realized is like the singing and dancing that I loved doing as a kid
Mm-hmm.
definitely has had to be integrated in my life, and I don't know why I ever thought it would have been separate. Like you said, we are all artists no matter what you do, even a stay-at-home mum looking after her child, making, food for her child to eat. Everyone is an artist, but it's like the energy that is needed to do the type of work that I do, I require to have like inner peace,
Mm-hmm.
nature, movement, because I'm not a robot and I do not function methodically by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I need things like movement and music, and being near nature to calm all the crazy chaos that goes on in my mind, to kind of like bring it into some kind of organized chaos so I can basically so it comes through me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds a bit woo woo, but I
No.
had a lot of chaos and my nervous system was very dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to do a lot of somatic therapy, breath work and stuff, not realizing until after doing it that I was able to actually more clearly and articulate my styling and working with my clients, because it was otherwise just a big jumble of like chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so as a creative, like I really had to learn patience with myself and learn how I do things.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's not how everyone else does it or how it should look, or sitting at a desk in school and like you learn like this. Well, no, I don't learn like that, which is why I was always in trouble
Yeah.
for interrupting and socializing and speaking. I always joke that my networking skills started way back in school because I was always
Mm-hmm.
getting talking by the teachers. But like, yeah, there's definitely a process that I have to stick to in terms of like my self-care, daily commitment to working out, just giving myself a clear mind because there's
Mm-hmm.
so much distraction more than ever. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you because I feel like with the job too, there's so much flux and spontaneity with these different clients and things can change in the flip of a hat, and that's the that can really disrupt the nervous system like you're talking about. And you already shared a couple of things that you do to kind of ground yourself, but are you able to find that you have a structure, like you can find a morning routine, things to ground you, like to find consistency, I feel like is what I'm meaning by that because consistency is kind of really hard to come by in that industry.
Yeah, it's to be honest, it is a daily challenge because like you said, I could think I would be getting up and doing my usual routine, and then I might get a phone call and I have to get in the car and rush to go and get some clothes for someone that needs to do a fitting that night because they're flying out the next morning to go and do whatever they're doing. Like that's how erratic and unpredictable it can be, because that's just the nature of the beast. Like that's how quickly someone can call you and you're booked to go and
Mhm.
style something last minute.
Yeah, totally, totally.
It's not ideal, but like I think as I'm getting older and as I'm doing more work on myself, I'm realizing that I really like predictability and consistency more, even
Mhm.
though the old me prior to doing all the work would have been like, oh yeah, it's fine. I love spontaneity. I love chaos. And I'm like, no, I actually don't. I actually like to know how my day's going to go. I
Mhm.
think I was just being so used to being in the chaos and like the unpredictability that I would thrive off the drama of it. And now
Mhm.
I'm like, no, I don't want that anymore. I want
Yeah.
peace and calm and, and chill.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I think I thought the idea of being spontaneous and improvisational was really cool because I think cool people were like very like we're all over the place kind of doing different things, but I think I had to sit with myself and like, Andrew, bro, you're a Virgo. There's like this deep part of yourself that loves structure and truly finds deep comfort, in that. While also, I mean, like we're trees, like we can't be completely beanpole like rigid. We have to be flexible within that structure. And I think it's balance is a tricky beast, but we're
Thousand
constantly
percent.
working on it.
I'm conflicted. I'm like a Sagittarius sun and then a Taurus moon, and like I Taurus is like wants stability and groundedness, and then this
Yeah.
Sagittarius is like all over the shop, adventure seeker, like thrill seeker. So it's
Yeah.
like I can't do this.
Yeah, that's exciting though. You got the yin and the yang in both of you. And I think it's a superpower. It's really cool. But I also wanted to say, because you're such a leader in this space of, again, just the way you share, the way you show up, speaking about self-confidence, speaking about the industry, the way you articulate, and even just, again, like it's a lot of people don't have I don't want to say they're aware. I don't like putting people down, but like you're so self-aware and the way that you can talk about going through certain things, a lot of us have our guard up and sharing vulnerability is still that weakness, which we both know is vulnerability is a superpower and like the greatest form of strength. Um, but you're such a leader in this space, and I'm curious because a lot of great leaders they had mentors growing up and they learned so much from people above them. And I know for me, thinking about the mentors, in our lives, it's so heartwarming and it's amazing because you have mentors and they lead us in different ways, and then you start, giving back and being of service, and that's one of the most fulfilling things in life. So I'm just curious, did you have a handful of mentors, whether that was family, whether that was friends, strangers, or certain areas of life? Do you have mentors growing up that like really shifted things for you and changed your life and opened your eyes in so many different ways?
Absolutely. I've got people in my life that are still my constant, that are my friends, business, personal, like 1,000%. I do not believe that you can, you know, be on this entrepreneurial journey, spiritual growth path, whatever it is, without having mentors, because, you know, I feel like family can only support so much. I always want to be around people that know more than me. I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. Um, and I just think from seeing certain things growing up and certain pains and struggles, I just want to be able to like learn as much as I can to be able to cope differently and see things from a different perspective. And I'm very grateful and lucky that I've had mentors in my life that have been able to show me those different perspectives. Um, because yeah, like the famous one liner that Garen Jones says, you can't see the picture while you're in the frame, which is such
Hmm.
an awesome saying. And I think about it all the time because you can't, like, when you're in it, you can't see it. So yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was great. That was beautiful. All right, we're wrapping up towards the end. And I want to talk. You're so cool. You're so cool. But for as we wrap up, we're talking about the future. So we talked about the present. We talked about the past a bit. Now the future. I always find the future is tricky, like with the manifestation, like especially like talking about our dreams out loud is kind of scary because a lot of times it doesn't happen. So we can be like, I don't want to talk about it until it happens, kind of thing. So you can just if you have a vision board or even a mood board, certain colors or feelings that you want as you move forward, or even certain dreams, just ambitions, goals. If you're willing to share, I'd love to hear what that future looks like for you.
yes, I definitely believe in vision board and manifestation, um, health and wealth consciousness, all of that. I write my goals down. I write every little detail of every single goal and get super creative. Like, even if it's 5,000 goals, it's like a ridiculous list. Because if you're willing to go there to write it down, then it's like there's so much more that's possible. Pinterest boards of like where I want to be living. I just have, photos of like being in front of the ocean, the car that I want to drive, the clothes that I want to wear, the
Mm,
person that I want to be, quotes. Like I put it all there and I'm just constantly looking at it and reading books about, wealth consciousness and attracting, all of that into your life. Like that would have to be probably one of the things that I do constantly and consistently, because you can just get so caught up in like complacency and just habit, right?
Mhm.
And then if you're not going to a workplace every day and you're an entrepreneur and you need to keep yourself motivated, like those things, you need a vision. Otherwise, you're trying to hit a target that you don't know where you're hitting to. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So yeah, all of that's definitely important. Visual, writing it down, doing a 90-day plan,
Mhm.
breaking it down into like 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and working backwards. I struggle with systems and structure because I'm a creative, so I need some kind of framework. Otherwise,
Mhm.
I'm just like, phew.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of a little bit of an insight into what I do.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And it's working, it's working, it's working. All right, now I
Mhm.
got a few final cues. So trying to make this an official podcast. A lot of people I admire.
Yeah.
They do this at the end. So Ivana, what's your favorite part about LA?
My favorite part about LA, that you can go out and you can meet the most weirdest, wackiest, inspiring humans and get opportunities that come out of complete darkness that you would never anticipate. But you would never get there anywhere else in the world.
Hmm.
Hands down. Like there is such a crazy but beautiful um energy about LA that I just believe is, yeah, you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. What is a stylist that you really look up to?
Law Roach, 1,000%.
Yeah.
He is like, and he calls himself an image architect. He's phenomenally gifted and talented. However, he's had his struggles. Like he walked away from styling for 7 months because he was highly depressed and burnt out. And anyone that knows that's in the industry, it is exhausting and takes a toll on your mental health. But he's actually shared vulnerably in quite a few interviews, and he's Zendaya's stylist, just for
Yeah.
context. But
Yeah.
yeah, his work is phenomenal, and if I even had the opportunity to work with him, I would, hands down.
Mhm.
He's very, very, very gifted.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now what is a book that it doesn't have like I feel like with books sometimes like certain books are objectively like better than others, but like there's a book that hits you when you read it at a certain time in your life that impacted you in a way that you can't even articulate, you know, it was the perfect thing at that certain moment. So was there a book that really influenced you in a really big way?
The Untethered Soul.
Oh, Michael A. Singer, yes. Great answer.
Phenomenal, profound book. I would read it over and over again.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That's great. That's great. What is your favorite form of expression? You talked about a few certain dancing, singing, but styling is the job. But what would you say your favorite is?
Singing Whitney Houston, of course.
Yeah. I gotta go out one time. We'll get there. We'll get there. Um, what is your favorite mindfulness practice?
Hmm. I am affirmations.
Mm. Do you do you listen to those like at night, or do you just have a ones that you go over in your head a lot, or through meditation?
I listen, but I have to write, and
Mm.
I have to put it on repeat, but constantly write them and say them in the mirror and really like feel them, not
Hmm.
just say them. You have to feel them, and that all is tied into the manifestation side of things.
Yeah.
Um, you can think it, you can be it, but you've got to feel it, I think, ultimately to attract it and attain it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm name dropping Tony Robbins again, but I think he talked about because I don't think he was a fan of affirmations because you can just say words without believing it and it doesn't really do much. There needs to be an emotion attached to it. So you have to like really, really, really believe it. And with the language, like changing your language, and then with a deep enthusiasm and belief in it, you can completely change your life. So that
Yeah.
was that's huge. That was one of my big things that I did like every morning to change my stories because incredible. All right, what is an underrated style of clothes that you think needs more recognition?
An underrated style of clothes. Huh. The vintage denim dickies that they wore in the 80s.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, them cross colors like the brand back then, like MC Hammer style, like all of
Yeah,
those like, denim 80s inspired. But yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And then finally, do you have any advice for anyone listening to this podcast who is chasing a dream?
Listen to your soul. Drown out all the noise and listen to what your soul is telling you because the answer is there of what you should be doing with your life.
Hmm, yeah. And how does one listen to their soul? Like, what do you think is, because sometimes I feel like, yeah, people telling you what to do, what not to do, and there's so much, and then you have social media, there's so much clutter. And sometimes it's really hard to know, like, know ourselves, know thyself. What do you think are certain ways that people can start to listen to their intuition and know that's their intuition and that's like what they love to do?
You've got an impulse. There's this slight impulse. If you get quiet and you really ground yourself, there's the voice, and then there's this little impulse that kind of is telling you like what direction to go. And you know when that impulse
Mm,
is talking to you, when you actually like drown out everything and you're like breathing, you're connected to your body, um, you know, you're relaxed, you're not in your head. That impulse that comes up, that's talking to you, you know when it's there.
mm. Ah, amazing, amazing, amazing. Ivana, you're the best. You're so great. Thank you so much for being here. Now, before we let you go, let the audience know where they can find you, how they can support you, and cheer you on in this journey.
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at Ivanna Fontana, or check me out on my website at www.ivannafontana.com.
Awesome. You heard it here first, y'all. All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your nights and keep doing
Love
your thing. You're
chatting.
changing lives.
Yes, let me know when you're back in LA so we can catch up.
I will. I will.
Take care.
You too.